Hi, everybody. This is Jim Safran with Pure Vintage Media, and welcome to our podcast interview. This week, I spent some time with Scott Sharrard. Scott's an American musician, prolific songwriter, singer, and a heck of a guitar player. Now, you probably know Scott best from the time he spent with the Gregg Allman Band as musical director and lead guitar player up until Gregg's passing in 2017. In 2020, he was asked to join that legendary rock group Little Feat. We discussed a whole range of topics, including one of his favorite, string gauges. Yeah, string gauges, as well as his upcoming solo tour. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did, and now please join me in welcoming Scott Sharrard to Pure Vintage Media.
All right, here we go.
Sounds very good.
That's a relief.
Good sound check.
Yeah, it's always a good idea. I heard the echo from the beginning last time, but I wasn't sure if it was just on my end or not.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's, I'd like to say Zoom is better than it is, but it's Zoom. And I have another program that I like to use, but I'm always worried. I haven't had time to really test it. It's higher end. The problem is that once the interview's over, you have to keep your computer running for like up to 20, maybe 15 minutes for it to encode on your end. That gets me the best quality sound.
Yeah, I'll bet.
But I'm scared to try that. So I've gone with what I know, which is Zoom. All right. Very good. Well, the recording is starting, but I'm just going to go and make the introduction. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. This is Jim Safran with Pure Vintage Media, and welcome to our podcast interview. Today, we have a special guest, Scott Sharrard. We'll get a little bit into his history, but most recently, Scott has got a series of solo tour, as well as he's still the lead singer and lead guitar player for Little Feat. Welcome, Scott. Nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me, buddy. It's the day of the blizzard up here in New York City, so couldn't pick a better day to sit inside and do an interview.
Believe it or not, it's about 29 degrees here in Charlotte, but sunny, and I'm getting a little tired of this cold weather. I'm ready for summer. I don't know about you.
Don't rub it in. We're looking at 2 feet of snow in Central Park today, so this might be as bad as 96.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have one memory of being in a really bad, week period up in New York City, and the lingering memory I have is that I couldn't hail a cab, and none of the buildings would let you in the building. In the end, I had to tip somebody $20 for me to have him hail a cab for me, and that worked.
Sounds like New York.
So always have a pocket of cash with you in New York.
Yeah.
I learned that. Well, welcome, Scott. Wow. I saw you guys, in Charlotte with Little Feat last year, and I was blown away by, I think I've told you this before, but how beautifully, not only did you kind of modernize the sound, you blended in beautifully with the band, and the mix was great, and it was an outdoor concert, and it was just awesome. I hope you guys had a good time at that show. You played with Tedeschi Trucks, and then to have Derek play with you, that was a magical night. We were jumping in our seats.
Oh, so you saw the show where they came out and sat in with Little Feat and did Spanish Moon? Is that the one you saw?
Yes. Yeah,
that was great. Their horns came out too, which is always great on that tune, to have those cats as well along in Susan, and it was so much fun. They did that one other time with us 2 years ago when we did our first summer of shows with them. They did Dixie Chicken one time, but I've known them for quite a while. I've known Derek, here and there since about 2008, and I feel like Susan and I crossed paths in New York, but maybe even in the period when they first got together, maybe even before she met Derek. I can't remember, maybe at Terra Blues or somewhere on Bleecker Street. But anyway, I've been a fan of both of them for a long time, and the guys in Little Feat have known Derek since he was a teenager. He used to open for Little Feat with the Derek Trucks Band, before he even joined the Allman Brothers.
Right.
So, there's a lot of love and history between the two camps. And those guys are just a delight to tour with. They take amazing care of us. They give us an hour to play before them. We sit in with them, they sit in with us. It's a big old love fest. So you were lucky to see that. I mean, we don't play a lot of shows with them every year, but we played several each summer for the last 2 years, and it's just been great.
Well, I can't remember seeing that much talent on a stage at night between the two bands.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's leaving it all on the table. I mean, the only thing that's I call it it's like the unfair advantage of Little Feat is the songbook. It's an absolutely insane amount of great material in this band, and even being the guy who always does the first draft of the set lists and then runs through them with Bill Payne. It's painful for me every night to make a set list sometimes, just thinking about the things we have to leave on the table because we only have an hour, or maybe because we want to play. We're playing a 90-minute show, and that's not going to be a problem anymore this year coming up, because we're doing the long farewell begins in the spring, and I think almost all of these shows, with the exception of the festival dates, we're getting to do an evening with, which means 2 75-minute sets. So that's that I'm really looking forward to, and we're also going to take huge artistic license with the over 50 years of original music. A lot of people don't realize that with Little Feat, the reason they're an extremely important rock band, one of the top 5 of all time for me, is because their material is equal to their musicianship.
Yeah. That's what you get being around 50, 60, 50 years, I guess, right?
Well, and it's also what you get when you're in a band with Will George, Paul Barrere, and Richie Hayward too, who are sadly no longer with us. I mean, I've gotten to experience the brilliance of Bill, Sam, Fred, and Kenny firsthand at the deepest levels, making records. We've made 2 records, Sam's Place and the newest one, Strike Up the Band, and I've written songs with all of them, and been in the studio with all of them, and obviously done tons of gigs with all of them, and lived with them. And I can tell you that they're all unique and brilliant in a way that when they fit and play together, it just becomes the sound we know as Little Feat. And then you just have to jump in and start swimming. You can't obsess about the weight of that or measuring up to it. It's just about knowing that I think we all trust each other, especially at this point. But we built a family out of this, to be honest with you, a new family of Little Feat. So I'm just incredibly grateful that they put the trust and the love in Tony Leone and I as the 2 new guys who grew up on the music to see eye to eye with us and be creative with us. It's just been amazing.
You guys look like you really enjoy yourselves playing together on stage. Is every concert, are you having fun, or does it feel tedious at times? I'm just asking that question in general.
Well, I mean, yes, as a band, I mean, we absolutely love playing with each other, and Little Feat is like all the great live rock bands, maybe with the exception of, I'll leave all the great stage show solo artists out of the picture. Like if you think about Michael Jackson going through to Taylor Swift, their shows are somewhat programmed just to deal with the effects and visuals. But a band like the Rolling Stones, they actually play like a bar band, even though they're playing in a stadium. And there's a lot of spontaneity. And it's the same thing with Little Feat that would be with the Stones or the Allman Brothers or the Grateful Dead or any of those bands, where you start with the song and then you improvise. And certain tunes are vehicles for it. Other tunes are just, they are what they are. They're 3 minutes long and you just play them. And that variety is amazing. And changing the songs and changing the arrangements every night is something everyone's up for. So when you see us having fun on stage, part of it is that. The main thing is how great the material is and how everyone plays it so well. And then the reaction from the audience to the songs, because you realize that these songs, the Little Feat catalog, it really, like all the best music, if you go from, the best classical to jazz to blues to soul to rock, it doesn't matter what genre, it kind of crosses every line and unites people. And Littlefeat's music is incredible at doing that night to night. It really makes people joyous, I would say, is the word I would use, and that's infectious to us as well. That said, being the guy who sings most of the songs, I mean, Bill and Tony sing a lot of the songs too. I sing about, probably on average, I sing about 10 to 12 songs a show in a 19-song show or whatever. So I guess I'm doing the majority of it, but vocal health is about the only thing that ever freaks me out, and I warm up and cool down every night. And I'm very dedicated. I've only changed Lowell George keys on like 2 songs, and I only did that on those songs because I liked how the slide guitar tuning sounded better. I liked open G better than open A, and I figured, why not give myself a break? And when you sing lower, you can growl a little bit more, a little easier. It makes a different performance. But otherwise, I'm doing all Lowell's keys, and I'm going to tell you something. They're way up there. I mean, some of those songs they're breaking into Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder territory.
Interesting you say that. I've thought the same thing. He was a hell of a musician. The reason I asked you that question, just to circle back, is every once in a while I'm watching you and Fred and Bill, and you look at each other as if you did something a little improvised, and you have a smile on your face. And that's why I asked. That part doesn't look forced. It looks like you're a big family. That's
happening all night, every night with everybody. Yeah. Because there are always there are several tunes where there'll be solos that are open spaces. And there are also things like, there's little I mean, I could go on about this all day. I mean, with Bill, obviously, his keyboard solos on Spanish Moon and Dixie Chicken are like, those two are like odysseys that change from night to night radically sometimes. And then like Kenny, always Time Loves a Hero, man, which he wrote that, he co-wrote that song with Bill and Paul, and he wrote that bass line, which is such a legendary bass line. But then his playing on that song, like, go listen to live versions of him doing it throughout his career. But man, on those verses, he'll be playing like almost Jaco Pastorius type of runs that go all the way up and down the bass, and they change every night. And sometimes they're so spectacular that I laugh and I miss the next entrance for the vocal, because they're so interesting. And like everyone's, then Sam, like one night he'll, we'll be doing something like Mercenary Territory or Spanish Moon, and on someone's solo, instead of doing the woodblock, he'll do the cowbell or do the congas, and then Tony will do something completely different. That's like, there was a groove they were doing on this cruise we just did on Dixie Chicken, underneath Fred's solo, and it was one of the nastiest sort of New Orleans funk, second line funk style grooves I've ever heard this version of the band play. And we were on the New Orleans cruise, and I think the guys were really inspired, like hanging out around George Porter and all the great legendary cats that were on the boat. And all of a sudden this thing just came out of that totally spontaneously. Nobody talks about that before the gig, but after the gig I ran up to the guys, to Sam, Kenny, and Tony, and I was like, what the hell was that? So that stuff happens all the time, man. And Fred has always been one of my favorite musicians, and I think he's one of the greatest guitar players in rock history. I mean, he played on so many amazing records. Jackson Browne, The Pretender, and Boz Scaggs' Silk Degrees, Ricky Lee Jones, all Tom Waits, all their best albums he's on. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think, Lionel Richie, Kenny Rogers, all their early hits is Fred on guitar, Cher. I mean, it's like, it's unbelievable. And when Fred plays, he never plays a false note. Like, Fred only plays stuff that he hears. And that's the greatest. Yeah. That's the greatest compliment I can give a musician, is somebody who only plays what they hear. That guy never bullshits. And there's 2 ways of playing when you improvise, in my estimation. And this is a gross oversimplification, but if you'll indulge me for a second. Please. When you think about, the Miles Quintet records with Coltrane or Wayne Shorter, the way that Coltrane or Wayne Shorter would play against Miles, So Miles, everything he played was perfection, and everything he played was what he heard. There was never a moment where you listen to Miles Davis and you go, I wonder if he knows what he's going to do next. He leads you with such confidence and grace and melody, and it's like watching Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope and box some giant guy. The grace of it. But then when Coltrane or Wayne would play, you'd have this whole other end of the spectrum of brilliance that's a co-equal branch, but is tons and tons of searching on the instrument and finding all these incredibly unexpected things. And it's more like a high wire act where you're actually not quite sure what's going to happen yet, but you build confidence with the soloist over the course of them developing the idea. And it creates a different bond. And of course, Miles famously said, I think it was to Wayne, though it might have been to John also, but maybe he said it to every sax player played with him. He'd say, your job is to move your fingers fast. Well, my job is to play melodies. And what was brilliant about that, even though it's kind of an awkward sort of compliment in a way to observe this and say that this is a great concept, is Miles was looking for contrast. He was looking for a foil who was totally different. And that's what you have with Fred Tackett and Bill Payne as soloists. Bill is more from the John Coltrane, Wayne Shorter school of improvisation, where it's kind of without a net and anything could happen when he really tears into it. And Fred is more like Miles. He's like super deliberate, super melodic, his tone is beautiful, and it's much more pared back. And I think their contrast is maybe the strongest weapon we have in our arsenal. And of course, as improvisers anyway. And where I try to fit in that is I try to be like Cannonball Adderley. So when you listen to Kind of Blue, you got Miles, you got Train, and then you got Cannonball. And Cannonball has this clean melodicism, but then he also has sort of a searching, more notey type of technique that helps him to contrast. And Kind of Blue was the driving force album of all the foundational jazz groups, or jam groups rather. The jam groups were all obsessed with Kind of Blue. So Grateful Dead, Allman Brothers being the key ones, and Little Feat as well. And that's that two guitar sound is supposed to be like a tenor trumpet sound. We have Lowell and Paul. Lowell would play slide, melodic, spacious, more like Miles. Paul would play more notey, more searching, more like Train. Same thing with Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir. Same thing with, obviously, Duane Allman and Dickie Betts. They're perhaps the most detailed exploration of taking what they call modal jazz and placing it into rock and roll. Because they had songs that would take it for 25 minutes, like Mountain Jam or Liz Reed, where they would try to do a full runway of like My Favorite Things or So What or something, even using waltz feels and even using some of the same progressions to articulate, and Duane doing the bridge pickup sound to sound more like a trumpet, and Dickie doing the neck pickup sound to sound more like a tenor. These were deliberate choices they made that were all based on these jazz groups that I'm talking about and these soloists. So if the experiment was the Miles Quintet and it became a sextet on Kind of Blue, and that was the apex, that's my subconscious casting of how I fit with Fred and Bill in terms of where I fit, is I'm in like the Cannonball role.
That, brother, was an unbelievable explanation because, when the Allman Brothers hit the scene, that was a unique sound. That was a brand new, unique sound, the way those two guitars blended. I think that's why they were so popular right off the bat. The live album, that was a dynamo. You really do blend in with Little Feat. I know now you've played with them for a long time, but the way you fit in is really, really fun to listen to, I guess is the best way I'd put it.
Well, thanks, man. It's kind of a resume-wise, and in terms of fitting in with these guys. It is the Cannonball analogy as an improviser is probably apt to. Cannonball was also an educator, and he understood the whole history of the music, and he came with a reverence for Miles in particular. even though he was already a successful band leader, when he got to play with Miles, he really had a reverence for Miles's history at that time. I mean, Train was a young guy, so it was a kind of a different dynamic with them. But that's what I try to bring to the band too. Is I've studied them since I was a kid. I saw my first Little Feat show, Let It Roll tour. I was probably, I don't know, 13, 14 years old. I saw them a few times one summer. That same summer, I saw my first Allman Brothers concert. I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan in the Instep tour when I was 13. I saw Jeff Beck that year. I saw all the blues and jazz greats. You know, B.B. King, Bobby Bland, Jack McDuff, Jimmy Smith, Kenny Burrell, Otis Rush many, many times in clubs and theaters. Luther Allison, you know, some of these guys also mentored me. You know, Hubert Sumlin in particular, Pontop Perkins when I was a kid in Milwaukee. So growing up with like blues and jazz influences, both listening constantly, studying at the Milwaukee High School of the Arts with this incredible jazz ensemble that I was in. Everyone in that band is like multi-Grammy-nominated or winning, performing, recording musician at this point. It's really been quite an insane journey for me, where every step there's been this extra check on the depth of the history to American roots music, and trying to infuse that in any project I'm in. And certainly for my inspiration as in my early teens, when I saw Little Feat and the Allman Brothers in particular, they taught me that I would be able to combine every genre of music I loved and then write a song from my perspective as like a white middle-class kid who was never, ever going to be Muddy Waters or Jimi Hendrix or Miles Davis, my greatest heroes. But falling short of that, there were guys like Lowell George and Duane Allman, who I'm also never going to achieve, but I at least can aspire to. I feel like we have similar positions as like these white guys in this multicultural, beautiful tapestry of American music. That's the foundation of it is African American music and its migration from Africa through the Caribbean to this continent. And I feel like those guys, Lowell and Duane in particular, Jerry Garcia, they really understood that lineage.
Yeah.
They really got it. And they performed always in integrated bands that were from, I mean, look at Will George's history with New Orleans, playing on Meters albums and working with Alan Toussaint. Look at Duane's history with King Curtis and Aretha Franklin and Wilson Pickett, preceding his work with the Allman Brothers, and then carrying through it. And then, you know, I suppose Jerry Garcia was considered to be more bluegrass oriented, but also with Jerry, his history with Ornette Coleman. I mean, Ornette Coleman was obsessed with the Dead and vice versa, and they jammed a lot.
Didn't know that.
And then eventually Branford Marsalis. Look at YouTubes of Ornette and Branford sitting in with the Dead, and you can see that's kind of the other side of the coin. You know, the Allman Brothers, they really go for the throat, as to where the Dead, you know, they'll kind of dance around what they're trying to do. And that's very similar to the difference between Coltrane and Miles and Ornette. Someone like Ornette, who was more way out there and fearless, you know. So I talk about these things because it's my training as a musician, and I was always taught from the earliest point of having an instrument in my hands to understand the connectivity and the history of all these genres. And I think that's really missing quite often in musicians and bands and singer-songwriters, is really inhabiting that whole history. And then, of course, the scariest part is coming up with your own material, your own personal material that's going to resonate. And if you can get that material to resonate across all kinds of different people using all kinds of different genres, that's the holy grail. I mean, that's Sgt. Pepper's, that's What's Going On, that's Inner Visions, that's Electric Ladyland, that's, you know, almost every Bob Dylan record. I mean, they go right, you know, that's Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah. It's like it goes right past every definition you have for music, and it just grabs humanity like this, and it says, holds up a mirror to you. I mean, that's what music does at its best. And I think Little Feat has successfully done this on many, many records. And there's a way to play the music live where you can help people to revisit that. And I think that's the best goal you can have. I mean, I felt the same way in my decade with Gregg Allman. The big difference with Gregg was, us writing songs together, me being his band leader as well, and doing the set list with him, and co-producing the records, Back to Macon and Southern Blood with him. The biggest difference between that and Little Feat is that Gregg had the voice, and that's the one thing about Little Feat that is haunting for me, and I'm sure it's haunting for the other guys in their own ways, because everybody obviously loved and revered Lowell, George, and Paul as singer-songwriters. But Lowell's voice, that was one of the voices for me as a singer from when I was a kid. I mean, I had a picture of him on my wall when I was 13, 14, because when I heard him sing, I was trying to sing like Marvin Gaye, and to me, like, Lowell had some of that phrasing, and then I had Stevie Winwood and Michael McDonald. Again, these were guys who were like, I'm looking at myself as like a middle-class white kid, and I'm going, I have none of the magic. But these guys, they've kind of found a way to put this style into what they do, but also just be themselves. Like, they're not trying to copy soul music. They're using soul music as a piece of technique and as a feeling that they can infuse into their own story. And from the very beginning, that was a very important delineation for me. And honestly, I fought with it throughout my career, because even when I first started with the Chesterfields in New York City, moving here from Milwaukee, I grew up always playing in integrated bands with people of different ages. And that continued with the Chesterfields, and there was constantly a thing of, in the late 90s and the early 2000s in the music business, singing the way I sang was like, it was not acceptable. But in the 70s, it would have been normal. Like, even Kenny Loggins is basically a soul singer. If you really listen to how he sings, you listen to him now and you're like, oh my God, this guy would be like the lead singer in Wolfpack. So my band was 20 years too early, because now all the bands, Lake Street Dive and Wolfpack and all these bands of, what I consider to be like middle-class white guys who are extremely talented, are using soul technique with their own stories and their own songwriting that is not copying the soul genre. It's more like what we used to call rock and roll in the 60s and 70s.
You're an encyclopedia. You've gone through so many references that I want to make a footnote and go back and say, first off, with Miles, my experience with Miles Davis, everybody told me you got to get Bitches Brew, and this was when I was in junior high.
That's the worst album to start with.
Yeah, I bought that album, and here's what I remember. I started sweating uncontrollably. I don't know why, just the perspiration just, I couldn't understand it. I had to keep listening to it. It was unbelievable. But I'll tell you, my favorite album, and it never gets mentioned, is Jack Johnson. A cut. There's a cut. The first cut is called Right Off.
Yeah.
And I read a story where Miles was late, so they just started jamming. And Miles gets there about, 10 minutes, 15 minutes late. And then he inserts his trumpet playing, and it blows my mind. That's one of my favorite songs. It's just the way it builds, slows back down, builds again. It's one of my favorites. I listen to it regularly. You just mentioned Volpec as a kind of I love Volpec, and I love all the bands that have split off from there. They didn't really split off, but they do their own thing, come back to Volpec.
Well, it's the classic. It's the classic Midwest business model, right? It's like Motown.
Yeah.
Because those guys are Michiganders like me. At least they all went to Michigan State in Ann Arbor, which is where I was born. But that's kind of the factory mentality once you get a sound. And they built it organically themselves. Wolfpack got on the scene by bucking the algorithm on Spotify. They had that track that was like 3 minutes of silence. And they went viral with a track of silence. And that's how everybody found out they were these really talented cats who were doing this really different kind of, I call all of it rock and roll. To me, they sound more like the Doobie Brothers than the Temptations,
True, yes. Corey's an unbelievable guitar player. And Nate Smith, Oh my God.
Yeah, well, I think I feel like Nate lives somewhere near you in the Carolinas or something, but I think Nate came into them later. That's the Fearless Flyers and like another offshoot branch.
Right.
Um, but he's not part of the first or second draft of both
Right.
yet. He's like a later draft. But yeah, I mean, now Nate, I mean, he's curating Newport and he just won a Grammy, I think. I mean, Nate's like taking off, it's
With such a
unbelievable.
small kit, what he does with a small kit on Fearless Flyers is just,
Well, he's a
anyway.
total. He's Nate Smith is an example of a musician who's sort of completely out of his era because to the barrier of entry, and this is the way it's been described to me. I was born in 1976, so I'm trying to be careful with this, but I know enough guys who played on enough hit records and legendary musicians from the 60s and 70s that I think I can speak on this with some confidence. The onus used to be on complete originality in the way you played, the equipment you used, maybe even perhaps how you dressed, what you talked about. Everything about being a musician was about being unique in that era. So if you wanted Jim Keltner or Steve Gadd or Bernard Purdie, and I'm just using guys, who played on like
Sure.
Steely Dan records, like all three of them would be on one Steely Dan album. They called each of those guys or Jeff Porcaro, none of them could play like the other guy at all, and each guy had a completely different setup, a completely different emphasis on where they placed the beat, how they drove the kit, where they drove the kit from, how much they would play, how little, or how much. So Nate Smith is an example of a musician who's from another era, essentially, because so much now with musicians is about being able to play everything. I mean, I feel like in my era, I caught the last draft, let's say the early 90s. I was playing with all these older blues and jazz musicians who hammered on me about having my own sound and not imitating people.
Mm.
But that in the YouTube era, going into the 2000s, from let's say 2010 until now in particular, it's just become this weaponized concept that you have to not only be able to play every style of music to be a musician or be a guitar player in particular, you also got to know how to film it in 4K by yourself and then like entertainingly demo a distortion pedal for a endorsement, and then book your own tour and promote 30 dates and drive a van. I mean, it's just become absolutely crushing. And to be fair, I mean, you can never play like Nate Smith if you wake up every day with that mentality. It's just not going to happen because Nate Smith is a guy who is laser focused on what he does well, and he doesn't leave his lane, and that's been his great success.
Wonderful. One of my favorite drummers. I this is a I'll share with the audience. This is the second interview we did. We did a great one about a month ago, and technical difficulties, and you've been gracious enough to do it again. But I sit here and listen to you, and I go, "Gosh, I could talk to this guy in a four-parter." You're an walking encyclopedia of music, and each time you use a reference, I go, "Oh, that's one of my favorites." I love it. I tell me about how you met Gregg Allman. We talked about it last time, but please just kind of give us that story again, how you hooked up with him. I'm impressed that not only you ended up becoming his musical director, but you became good friends. And I'm touched when I hear you say you kind of feel like his spirit's always with you.
Yeah, it's a big subject, I'll take it from the beginning. I mean, there's one person on earth who's responsible for me playing with Gregg Allman, and that's my good friend Jay Collins, the great saxophone player, and he's also a great singer songwriter. I was actually in his band, and when I joined his band, I want to say it was about 2005 ish, and he was living in Brooklyn at the time. He was married to Amy Helm, Levon Helm's daughter, of
Sure.
course, great, who's an amazing artist in her own right, and also a collaborator with Little Feat. And we all lived in Brooklyn at the time, and I started playing guitar in Jay's band. And that's also when I met Tony Leone, by the way, who plays drums in Little Feat now. He was playing in Oa Bell with Amy Helm. So we're all from this kind of New York scene. And then he and Amy moved up to Woodstock full time. And I would say probably in about '06 or '07, so shortly after I started working with him and met him. And then in '08, in the summer, Jay had been playing already with Gregg Allman for a long time, since I think 2001. I mean, Jay played with Gregg Allman for 17 years, I think 16 years or something.
Mm.
So Jay called me up and he said, I want you to come sit in with Gregg Allman at the Allman Brothers show. And I went to this show in Camden, New Jersey. I was like, I guess I was 29 years old. I'd never met any of them before. And it was very intimidating, but I went right into Gregg's dressing room and he was absolutely just, poured the Southern charm on like he always did. And he was he really lived up to his myth when you met him. He had a real style about him that was very unique and like a very quiet certitude. And he said to me, we had some pleasantries, and then he says, "Oh man, I hear you can pick," and I wanted to, and do you know about Wayne Bennett playing on all those Bobby Blue Bland records? And then of course I was so lucky because I went immediately to my childhood, not only going to Bobby's shows and seeing him with Wayne, but playing in bands with guys who used to play with Bobby, who lived in Milwaukee, who would school my ass about how to play like Pat Hare or Wayne Bennett from those early Duke Peacock Bobby Bland records. So I was able to say yes with total confidence, and then I went on and played You Don't Love Me, and I threw a couple of Wayne Bennett licks in there. And man, he was laughing and slapping the organ, and I knew I had him. And then came back at the end and played Southbound, and went up there with Jay, and we just ripped it together. And Jay Collins and I have, we're like brothers. We have like an unbelievable musical rapport. And I think he saw that, and he was really excited by the whole combination, and he gave me the job on the spot. And then we went through a lot of changes in the band, and eventually ended up with Mark Quinones from the Allman Brothers joining us, which was an unbelievable addition, and then settled on Mark Franklin and Art Edmiston from Memphis on horns, who are just unbelievable horn players and arrangers. I mean, the best you could ever hope for to settle in with Jay Collins as a horn section. And we made this live album called Back to Making Live, and I want to say that was, oh God, when was that? It's 2013 or something like that. It was when he also did All My Friends, 2012, 2013. And I basically got the MD chair out of that job because I helped put the live album together with Gregg. And Gregg and I had already started writing. We wrote a song called Everything a Good Man Needs. Finished that.
Love that song.
Oh, thanks, man. That's on my solo album, Saving Grace, because we ran out of time to cut it on Southern Blood. And then a demo of it got to Taj Mahal, and he wanted to cut it, but he had just cut an album with Kev Moe, and he happened to be in New York City at the time. It was when the Grammys were in New York, the year I was nominated for Southern Blood, and I managed to get a hold of Taj and Bernard Purdy, actually, and we cut it. That song was not supposed to be on Saving Grace. It all happened because Bernard and Taj were in New York City at that time, and we got a studio and cut that song because Taj wanted to sing it.
I didn't realize Bernard was on that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. I mean, it was kismet. It just, I don't know how it all worked out, but it just happened. And I didn't want to sing the song on my record because I felt like I wanted to get one of, Gregg's heroes. And Taj was like, besides Bobby Bland and Muddy Waters, was probably his favorite singer. We would listen to Taj constantly. I mean, Taj is the reason the Allman Brothers performed Statesboro Blues. His record...
Didn't know that.
His record with Statesboro Blues is the reason Duane Allman plays slide, with Jesse Ed Davis on there. That was when it occurred to Duane to play slide guitar. So there's a long history, and it was an honor to cut that with Taj. It came out after Gregg had passed away, of course. But we had finished that song, and then we started writing My Only True Friend, and of course that became the lead track and a fairly successful Americana single, although I think you're going to hear more of the song because there's the pre-chorus to the song, I hope you're haunted by the music of my soul when I'm gone. They're using they're using the music of my soul as the name of this new Gregg Allman documentary, which just got announced, that's coming out probably next year. I think it's on the festival circuit now. But I don't know how much they're going to use it, but I sat down with James Keach for several hours and did interviews for that. So I don't know how much of my face you're going to see in it. Probably a little bit, I hope. But that's coming out.
Is that Stacy Keach's brother?
It is, yeah, James Keach. He did a number of really amazing rock docs
that came out. He did the David Crosby one. He did the one on the amazing. By the time I get to Phoenix, Glenn Campbell. He did that one.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a great documentary director.
Two brothers that went to my high school, Van Nuys High School.
Oh yeah,
The Keaches, yeah.
so
Famous high school.
yeah. Well, James, he's a lovely man, and he really knows his stuff with Gregg. I was very impressed. So maybe you'll get some more background from that. I mean, I wrote an article for this publication that's pretty popular down south called The Bitter Southerner. It's a print magazine as well as an online magazine, and they asked me to write an essay about writing the song "My Only True Friend," and you can also find that essay is on my Substack, Scott Sharrard's Endless Road. I reprinted it there. I think it was like the second Substack I ever did, and I think the story of writing that song really tells the best. It gives the best background to what would become how our creative bond would become like a deeper friendship. Like it surprised me how deep that relationship got. It kind of snuck up on me. We spent tons of time together, and I loved him, and I revered him, of course, and I was mostly charmed by his voice.
Yeah.
And when you would go on stage with Gregg Allman, it was like going on stage with Frank Sinatra or Aretha Franklin. It changed the chemical composition of the room, and everyone sort of agreed on it. It was almost like everyone just nodded at each other, like, there it is. It's like a portal or something. I don't know. When people have voices like that, it's indescribable, and being in Little Feat has been extremely difficult for me as a singer. Not only living in Lil's shadow as a vocalist, but I also live in Gregg's shadow, because every night we would go on stage, I would stand with him, and we would go through the transformation together from human to Gregg Allman. We'd take that.
I can hear. I was just gonna say I can hear the reverence in your voice. Do you get choked up when you play those songs a little bit?
The solo tour has been painful. I got to admit. I mean, in November when I did the first one, I actually did it with Jay Collins. I had him as a special guest, and the two of us were doing those songs, and it kind of broke me, to be honest with you. I haven't really recovered from that gig yet, because it put me back in that time, and it also put me back in that era, right? So 2008, it's like Obama's president, and we lived through, just this period together. We were hanging out every night on the bus with Gregg in the back lounge, and we'd smoke weed and watch Pink Floyd live videos and just laugh and listen to Bobby Bland and Howlin' Wolf and just tell stories. And it was every night we would hang out almost. I mean, that band was really like an old school. It was like being with a bunch of teenagers for some reason. Gregg's best friend Chank was always on the road with us, and they had been best friends since they were teenagers at the beginning of the Allman Brothers. And Chank was just the most incredible. Like, he was like a folk hero of the South or something, this guy. I mean, these guys, like Chank and Gregg, every single thing, they would talk the way Miles Davis played the trumpet, right? It's like everything that came out of their mouths, they meant, and they didn't waste a word. They were just really stand-up guys. And they drove the vibe of the bus, and we all had bunks on it, but very often we would all be back in Gregg's room, piled up on his bed, like teenagers.
Yeah.
Watching Squidbillies or watching Pink Floyd live at Pompeii, or
great movie. That was a great movie.
It was unbelievable. And then you'd go through the transformation together. You'd stand together at the side of the stage. And the band, I think we shared an experience too with Gregg, where it was like, look at this motherfucker. Like, he's gonna.
Yeah.
We hung out all night. He had. I'll be honest with you, a lot of girlfriends on the road. I mean, he was in his late 60s, and he was living like he was 18 still. But
good for him.
He'd go out and deliver, man, every night. I mean, no matter what was wrong with him.
Nick, you make me a bit nostalgic for some of the good old days, and such a a programmed music environment in a lot of ways, new music.
I mean, I think
Really,
our whole society is now massively mentally ill, and
yeah,
I didn't go into this without baggage. I mean, I have a lot of baggage that I brought into this era, and by this
yeah.
era, I mean, the beginning of Trump was
I don't want you to shy away from this, by the way.
I just got your video banned by saying his name. The beginning was
It's
traumatizing.
okay. You know what? Let me tell you something. I don't care. Please
Well,
let
the
it
beginning,
loose.
2016 was traumatizing. I think, to be honest with you, in his own way, I think it was traumatizing for him to even get elected. I don't think that was really the
Yeah,
plan.
he wasn't expecting it.
And then we had, his stewards around him and all that stuff. The pandemic is really, I don't think, I think it's going to take 50 to 100 years to understand how much that damaged us.
Yes.
I don't think I think we're all when you have an entire society that can sequester comfortably for the most part, and be a gigantic experiment. It was 100% what we had to do. It was 100% necessary, but it's a very unique. It's an experience that has never happened before, and now we have AI coming in, and that's going to be an experience we've never had happen to society before. And this is on an epic scale. It's almost like inventing boats or something. I mean, this is like or inventing
Yeah.
the wheel or the printing press all in 1 year or something. It's as if all technology happened at once instead of gradually over thousands of years or whatever. And I don't think our monkey brains can keep up with any of it. And I think even you and I doing this, I think before the pandemic, we may have done this on the phone, or we may have not done it at all, or we may have done it when I was on tour, you know. And there are certain people who still do this. If you want to go on the Mel Robbins podcast, you have to go to Boston and see her. So there's some people who adhere to the old philosophies, but they're in the minority, you know.
Can you
And
imagine? Can you imagine somebody from the 50s watching a modern commercial on TV? It would blow their mind. I don't think their monkey, as you put it, which is a great term, their monkey brains would explode. Think about that. Think about the quick edits, the color changes, the this and that. Then you compare it to like a old Alka-Seltzer commercial in black and white, which is what they were used to. Um, it is. There are times that I feel like everything's moving so quickly, and it's not just a factor of age. It's just it's almost too quick. And I
yeah,
when you talk about hanging with the band in the back of the bus and just the compadre feel of all that and the ensemble feel of the band playing live on stage, I kind of yearn for that. And I think that's why I was so touched by your performance in Charlotte last year. It just felt like you were at a big party
oh,
and everybody was having a great
it's
time.
very similar to the Gregg Allman Band in terms of
Yeah,
how we feel together. It's not quite the same though because there isn't that. Greg was like he lived some of the rock star lifestyle, and we all were. I was in my early 30s, so I was
yeah,
at that time I was smoking weed every night.
yeah,
He had quit drinking, but we would sneak bottles of wine or tequila on the bus and drink in the front lounge, and like it was. I don't do any of that anymore, and nobody in
yeah.
Little does that anymore. I mean, occasionally Kenny Gradney and I will pop a bottle of Veuve Clicquot. That's about it. I'm a bit of a wine snob, and I don't get out of control with it ever anymore. But
Yeah.
especially as a singer, but it's very tame compared to. And there's something, the nostalgia you're feeling and that I'm feeling also to being with Greg that was a very different lifestyle and a different person, sort of being in that orbit of that person who lived that lifestyle. It is something that I don't think it exists anymore, to be honest with you, because I think that it's just we don't live like that anymore.
No.
As a society, I just don't. I think also you see young people like they're not, they're starting to like not go on dates anymore. They're starting to sequester. and it's becoming sort of an epidemic. And I'm not saying it's on a large scale, but it's on an alarming trend that's very bad. And concerts and playing this classic kind of music is an opportunity for people to be together in a room and to celebrate. And particularly music like Little Feats, it's not on the nose political. It's not, we don't give speeches from the stage, we just jam. And I think I've always felt my job as a musician is not to sort of preach. I mean, I did a Substack recently about Bad Bunny's halftime performance because I'm an essay writer and I deal with American music history. And I personally, this is my taste, and we're all allowed to have our own taste. I felt like the performance was a profound statement. I thought it was the most important artistic statement we've had, I would cautiously say, since perhaps 2020 or even 2016, because it did have my rule in it, which is the uniting principle is what drove the performance. And what was great about what he did was he did it as himself from his area of culture, which, by the way, hello everyone, Puerto Rico is part of the United States. Let's all calm down. Okay, so yes, but Puerto Rico is an extremely important part of American music. It's an extremely important part of where I live in New York City. The most important musicians in my life, two of them are Mark Quinones and Bobby Allende, and they are Puerto Ricans from New York City, and what they've taught me about salsa in particular and how that works in funk and rock. I mean, look at what Mark did in the Allman Brothers, since Seven Turns all the way through to the end of the band. He brought that flavor into that band. So you want to say, oh, well, this isn't part of like how Dickie Betts plays. It's like, no, actually, it's an integral part of how he spent the whole end of his career. It was how Mark played percussion. So this I think was the message of that. And I took some heat for writing positively about it, and I didn't.
I loved it. I loved the article or your post, by the way. That was beautiful.
Well, thank you. I mean,
and very insightful. And for those of you that don't know, Scott's got a wonderful column that he writes on Substack. Endless Journey, is that the
Endless Road?
Endless Road. Sorry. You need, if you're a subscriber to Substack, please check it out, because that does give you your opportunity to stand on a bit of a soapbox and pontificate about where we are, what's going on, and your feelings about that. And I think it's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
I totally agree with you on the halftime show, and some of the comments just, I cringe when I hear people say, "Why couldn't we have an American?" And I'm going, "You dumbasses."
I mean, I literally, in my comment sections on social media, obviously Facebook in particular, I had people accusing me of being a groomer for that piece. I mean, how do you go this far? And my response to that is, did you actually read this? And you probably didn't. You saw the picture and the title, or it's a bot from Russia. I mean, that's the kind of scale we're on right now, right?
That's right.
So I really, most of the time I've actually even been I've been silencing those comments. I don't block people anymore unless it gets really out of hand like that, because I have to assume that either someone is ill-intentioned or a bot at that point. But, I do silence the comments, because what ends up happening is I'll have people who support the piece who start engaging, and it becomes very ugly very fast, because people get behind a keypad and all of a sudden they think there's some kind of a justice warrior on either side, and that's not what music is about, and it's certainly not what American music is about. American music is literally, like, when it is its best, it is this safe space for democracy and voices. It is not a safe space for people with extreme racist views, though. And that's the thing I will say. On the far left, you don't see that. On the far right, it is worse, because you do have people who are adjacent to horrific concepts of the world's past and future. They are horrific plans and concepts, and that's a different thing On the far left, I don't see anything equivalent to that. I mean, that's
No,
so
we can
so.
be naive. Yeah, we can be naive. We can be silly. We can admit we're wrong, but I don't see the mean spirit that you do see on the right, the extreme right, and
I mean,
that's the difference.
I could never have told you that I would live to agree with people like George Will, David Frum, and David Brooks. I mean, and I do. I agree with them now.
But
We're
you
all
see,
on the same page.
those are the type of Republicans I grew up with. We were all friends. Some of my closest friends are conservative in that vein, but this whole thing is different. And when you saw his insanity this past 2 weeks, it's like you try to turn it off, but it's gosh, my crazy uncle's at it again, and he is crazy. And I don't care if this will never get banned. There may not be an advertiser that wants to attach an ad to it via YouTube's algorithms. I don't really care because it's refreshing to hear the way you enunciate all this because it's so true. We're all feeling this. We're all feeling like, what the hell is going on?
I want two sane parties again. That's what I want.
Yes.
We can start there, and then we've got to fix problems. I mean, this whole thing. This my biggest issue with this country is the lack of universal health care, and I mean this whole thing that's going on with that is one of many. I think they're crimes against humanity actually that we're witnessing. I think the people who are holding the levers of power now are kind of creating extinction level events. And I'm very worried about that, and I don't recognize anything about the people I know in these doctrines and these actions that I respect on any side. I just don't think it represents us. I think it's supposed to be a representative government, and I think right now we don't have one. I think that's the headline. Everything else you want to pick apart about it, it's almost pointless at this point because if you don't have what the framers put in terms of the checks on power and co-equal branches, and you don't have representative government because it's been bought, and everybody can agree on that one. Boy, oh boy, you want to talk
Right
about
or
how to
left,
start a conversation. So I think we all agree on that, and I think my job as a musician is always to talk about music first. I mean, I can have my opinions, like I've espoused here, about what's going on at this moment, and I do think that I'm right about these because I listen to a lot of people in all different parts and all different spheres who are not on whatever Kool-Aid's being handed out wherever. But with the music in America, our best way to tell the world the story of our soul, the language of our soul, is our music in this country. And our music it needs every culture and every minority that we see demographically, whether they're Puerto Rican, African American, any part of the Asian continent, if they're Indian, if they're Chinese, if they're Japanese, all that music is part of our music in a way, in different measures, and I think that is our path out of madness, is our music. And that's what when I play music, that's what it's about. But also what I'm trying to do with these essays, and I'm creating my own sort of pedagogy and also my own kind of history of music as I understand it through the people I've learned from. And I'm trying to occasionally drop a few breadcrumbs as I go through to say, hey, this is where I think we are now, right? Maybe we can go a little bit forward trying to see it from this angle. And it's just my opinion. It's an essay. It's an opinion piece. And if parts of it make you angry, that actually might be the point of it. I don't know. It's just opinion pieces are like that.
Very nicely put, Scott. That's, like I said, we could have you'd probably get bored after a while talking to me, but I could do 4 or 5 parts with you because you're multidimensional. A lot of the interviews I do, you can see the look in the guest's eyes, like, okay, here comes the same questions over and over again. It's like, you're on the road promoting your new film, but we seem to go in different areas, and I just sit here and I nod and I go, man, you're an old soul for for such a young man. You've seen a lot.
Thanks.
You've played with yeah. No, I
I've been
really
hearing that since I
sincerely
was a
mean it.
teenager. It's a double-edged sword, of course. I mean, you basically, I sacrificed my entire youth to first get good enough on the guitar and then hit the road. I started doing club gigs regularly when I was 16 years old.
That's amazing.
And I moved to New York City when I was 20. So from Milwaukee. So, but I probably should be talking about. I mean, we did mention my Substack, but I mean, there's a bunch of stuff to promote as well. I mean, there's like I mentioned the last two Little Feat albums, which I feel like Sam's Place got out there and got a Grammy nomination.
Great album.
But Strike Up the Band, I feel like didn't get as much attention as it should. I mean, 13 new Little Feat originals. I was extremely proud of that record. But I don't think records, especially for bands like us, don't really do the same as they used to, of course.
No.
So it's there, but it's good to mention that and tell people to go listen to it. And then the farewell tour, I think this is going to go on for a couple of years, but I would make sure you get out to a show. I think it's littlefeet.net or something. Somehow these guys didn't get .com when they signed up. I don't know, but it's one of those. And then all my stuff, if you can spell my name, you can find me on all the social handles, Sharrard. And my website I did get my website, scottsharrard.com.
Thank God.
And if you just scroll down on the front page, you'll see all my gigs. Because I have a few projects. I mean, I have a band. I have this funk band that I do that does all instrumental funk music from the 70s. And we do covers of Grant Green, Quincy Jones, the Crusaders. And it's
Crusaders.
It's like two horns, drums, percussion, and B3 organ player. And Tony Leone from Little Feat's on drums and that. It's called El Dorado Slim. And we're playing a few gigs this year. We're playing at the Rochester Jazz Festival and playing at the Bitter End in New York and the Falcon in Marlboro, and then my solo tour, which I'm playing in Florida. I have a Jazz Fest after show in New Orleans on May 1st. I have a City Winery show in New York City, April 26th. So all those are on my website, but those are all like storytelling acoustic shows where I call it Endless Road Live. So basically my Substack sort of comes to life, and I play songs and I tell stories and talk about the history behind them.
My very good friend, my best friend here in Charlotte, known him for 30 years, Dave Julian, has committed to following the Little Feat farewell tour around the country, kind of like going and watching Fish or The Dead.
Nice.
I've never met any. I mean, I've been a Little Feat fan for years, but nobody knows the history like Dave Julian. And he was with me in Charlotte when we went and saw you guys, and he was just up and dancing. He couldn't stop. By the way, we talked about the Knicks, and I mentioned that to him, and he said, we got to figure out when the Knicks are going to be playing the Hornets here in town and get Scott here. And his wife runs the arena.
Oh, wow.
So it would be a first-class experience. So let's kind of try and track that. Be great if it's when you guys are in town. Probably not, but that's an open invite. He wanted me to tell you
that's
that.
That's amazing.
So,
wow. Yeah. I love the Knicks this year, man. I know they're a little scrappy, and a lot of people still like to hate on them, but I don't know. We might. I think we're definitely going to the playoffs. I don't know if they can take take it all the way, but I really think that Jalen Brunson is an extremely inspiring team leader to me. I like how he shares the spotlight and the ball, and the way they play is very New York. And now we got Jose Alvarado, speaking of Puerto Rico. So we got Alvarado, we got Sohan. We got an unbelievable group of players, and they're not big guys. Towns has been killing it recently, and I've always liked him. He's a big guy, and Robinson's always good to save the day at the in the paint. But man, I'm really my whole family's obsessed with them this year too, just because of this lineup of personalities and how they play. And I think that something like the way the Knicks play basketball, I know it might not be. I know they're not. They don't have Steph Curry, they don't have LeBron, they don't have all these guys, but they have each other, and there's that story again, right?
there's that
ensemble.
There's that American story again, right? They really when they hit the court, they look out for each other, and it's also to their detriment because when they can't work as a team, they blow it. Like they had a game recently where they should not have lost, and they did because they couldn't get their collective rhythm. And if you had Steph Curry, you wouldn't have to worry about it. You just let Steph dunk the rest of the game, and Bob's your uncle, you're done. But these guys, they need each other, and there's something so amazing about that to me. There's something so inspiring about it, and I love all the players. I love Josh Hart. I love Kolek. Like when they put him in, I'm like, how is this guy hitting these threes? And it's all because of how they cover for each other and work. And I think that sports teams are like bands that way.
It's as much, just two things. I know a lot about people hating the team that you love and you're attached to because I'm an LA Dodger fan.
Oh, man.
It's very convenient now for everybody to say they're ruining baseball, but that's a lazy argument. We'll get into that another time. But I grew up watching Magic Johnson and the Lakers, and it was a chemistry between Magic was that same type of player. He was so unselfish, and he would hand off to Michael Cooper, and then Coop would go flying, and it was like watching ballet. So I know what you're talking about, and it goes with music too. I've always said my favorite bands are true ensembles. Maybe everybody takes a step forward a little bit for a solo, but it's never an ego-driven thing. And if the band doesn't play together, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not interested.
Well, every rock band is modeled after the Beatles, and I'd say cautiously say every jazz combo is probably patterned and put together off of like the Miles Quintet. And they all
agree.
They're like Shakespearean plays. It's like,
nice.
The next voice steps on the stage, and it gets another character that just adds to the overall story.
Dude, you are a true Renaissance man. Next thing you're going to tell me is that you brew your own beer, or you've invented a couple of devices.
My only real obsession outside of music and literature and movies that I dabble in is cooking. And my wife is actually she went to it was called the French Culinary Institute. They changed the name. I forget what they changed it to, but she went there and she worked as a pastry chef. She staged with like Danielle Ballou, and then she worked for Jacques Torres, the chocolate maker in New York, and Alain Ducasse, who's a famous Parisian chef. So, and then she worked at a lot of bakeries and stuff, and now she does styling for food photographers. But she's also French, so food is a really important, like our house is just like a constant cooking and music immersion. So this is why like New Orleans is our favorite town, besides New York. They're co-equal branches in our house.
Yeah.
And New York and New Orleans have a long storied history. Like New Orleanians always like Wynton Marsalis and Dr. John. They've always had one place here and one in New Orleans. It's always been a thing. And Louis Armstrong, he famously moved to Queens. So they have a kinship, and my thing is like definitely a lot of cooking. When my wife's not cooking, I jump in, and then I got a grill upstate, and it's also a smoker. It's called a PK grill. So I'll smoke, pork shoulders and ribs. I'm a big Rodney Scott devotee for the pork, and Aaron Franklin for the meats.
So that's another thing. Oh my gosh, if the three of us get together, you, me, and Dave's family has roots in New Orleans going back a couple hundred years, loves to cook, and usually goes to the jazz festival every year. I would just sit back and listen to the two of you guys talk. So we're going to have to make that happen somehow.
I need to get some recipes off them. I got my pork shoulder down, man. I feel really confident about that. I actually use Rodney Scott's rub for that one. I cheat on that one and use his rub, and then I can really do like some beef short ribs. And I've done some duck. I've done some leg of lamb that came out amazing. So when the weather gets nice up here, my mother-in-law and my family, I have 2 young kids too, so we'll go up there constantly. It's near Woodstock. We have a house up there, and I keep my PK grill up there. And when it gets nice, I go. And I found out one of my biggest influences is Aaron Franklin from Austin, and his co-author of all his cookbooks, Jordan McKay, recently moved to Kingston, New York, which is 10 minutes from my house. And he found me on Instagram because I tagged him when I was doing one of my smokes. And now we've become friends, and he comes to my concerts, and hopefully this summer we're going to do some, I don't know, we're going to have to do some collaborations of some sort.
Do you do a good brisket?
No, I haven't tried yet. I don't have the time. See, my kids are, well, my youngest just turned 9. My other guy's 14. They're both boys. But when I'm up there, when I'm home and I'm not touring, I try to spend as much time as I can with them. And sometimes it involves cooking. But as you can imagine, at their ages, the attention span is like, especially with my youngest, is very short. But they love food, and they love cooking, and they eat everything. And their mom is obviously the real cook in the family, and their grandmother, who's from the south of France originally. Their food is insane. And I basically, when I go up there, I just do my little barbecue stuff and call it a day.
Do either of your boys play guitar?
They don't play any instruments. I mean, my youngest has had some interest in piano, and we got him lessons, and then he soured on it. But he's only 9. I mean, I started playing the guitar, fooling around with it when I was 10. I got really serious when I was 12, so still room. My older son, I feel like he's too smart for music, and I'll give myself and my wife a little bit of credit. I feel like their childhoods are going too well for them to be musicians.
I hear you.
It's like, right. We need more like scientists, doctors, lawyers. These are creative people.
Yeah.
And I originally wanted to be a marine biologist when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. I was going to aquariums all the time and studying about fish, and I wanted to be a deep sea diver. I mean, I have vivid memories of this obsession. And then as I started to like girls and I started to go to concerts, I started to figure out I was a kid who was really overweight and was constantly, every year my family would move, and I was always changing schools, and I was always getting beat up and bullied and punished, and I was terrible in school except for English and history. Everything else I was awful at. And then I saw some kids who were very popular do a concert where they played like a Bruce Hornsby and U2 song, and all the girls ran over to them. This is when I was 12.
Yeah.
And I said, all right.
You figured it out.
I've been fooling around with this guitar for a couple years. Now I got to get serious about it. This is maybe how I get out of this.
Yeah.
And on that front,
I wanted to be an astronomer or an astronaut. Never quite got there.
See, for me, those are the kind of professions we need, or like those people. And I'm hoping for my kids that I think with those mediums, those people are very inspired by the arts. And I think the arts are, when you look at Albert Einstein or someone like that, the arts, he played the piano, and the arts were extremely important to him, but he didn't need to bother with it as a career. And he managed to help map, society into, map them out into a better direction. That's my goal with my kids. I want them to be happy. I've been very happy that they've had childhoods. I did not have a childhood. It was extremely traumatizing and upended and crazy. And then I just went into the craziness of entertainment, and it's all been, this part of my life has been trying to figure out how to not be in the crazy shit all the time.
You're getting older, my friend.
Yeah.
Got any gray hair there?
Oh, yeah. It's there. Certain light, it gets a little scary.
Okay, I want to end on 2 things. We talked a lot about your connection with Little Feat. Just tell me, you told me last time how you got the gig, because I think it's a fascinating story also, just like Gregg Allman. And then I wanted to ask you about string gauges.
Well, the problem is that you always ask the string gauge question at the end.
Right.
We should always start with the gear on vintage. I'll tell you about my 2 vintage guitars. How's that? I've got a Martin 0018 that my dad bought new in 1965 or 66.
Nice.
And it's a 64. And that's the guitar I learned to play on, and I still have that. There's a bunch of pictures of me online where I'm posing with it. I used it in a True Fire instructional video. I used to tour with it, but now
so you give lessons on that?
That's I've got a bunch on True Fire. I'm also starting my own platform. I just teamed up with a guy who digitally markets these things.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do my own American Roots Music Academy
Nice.
launch. But yeah, True Fire has some stuff I've done over the years. And
Okay.
my solo gigs, when you come see me, though, I tour with a Maton because they have the most unbelievable pickups and they sound amazing.
Australian brand, wonderful
It's
guitars.
ridiculous. Tommy Emmanuel, actually, and our manager for Little Feat, Brian Penix, hooked me up with them, and they're an incredible company.
I saw that you played with Tommy in the past.
We've jammed a lot. I also just did his camp in Nashville for a few days.
Oh,
He's
okay.
been a big supporter of mine since I met him many years ago, like back to when I was playing with Gregg. But certainly since I started with Little Feat, he's become a really passionate supporter of mine, and I've been very humbled by it because I think he's one of the most brilliant guitar players on earth. It's been crazy. I certainly can't hang with him, but I try to do my best to do my own thing with him. The slide comes out a little more often with him. Try to do something I haven't seen him do. He probably does that amazing.
Chet Atkins loved him as well. One of his favorites.
That was his main mentor.
Yeah.
And I also have a '69 Strat that my dad bought that Martin at Herb David's Guitar Shop in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And Herb had a Strat there for me. It's a '69 that is rumored that parts of it belong to Jimi Hendrix. I have that here at my house, and I only record with that. Recently, I've been using it for Open A Slide. It sounds pretty incredible for that. It's like a rosewood. So I do have a couple vintage instruments that are pretty
And a few extra guitars back there.
Well, back there on this side, I have that was a gift from Steve Miller to me. That's a Billy bow that was designed for Billy.
Really?
Gibbons. Billy Gibbons gave it to Steve, and Steve gave it to me. It's an amazing guitar. I don't travel with that one, and then that's an old Harmony Bobcat that I used all over the Southern Blood album.
Love those.
Those are cool. That's on a lot of Gregg's last album. And then most of my number one guitars are all in the Little Feat locker in Nashville these days, but none of them are vintage. I love the Novo guitars, and I love Dennis Fano as a builder. I've got one of his Fano SP6s, and then he made me a Cirrus T, but I ended up, honestly, all those guitars, I changed all the pickups and configurations and wiring and frets, and all my stuff is like super customized. None of my guitars are stock.
Yeah, you know what? You can drool over them and put them in specialized humidified cabinets, or you can play them and get the right tone.
Well, I do have my, the ones I keep at home are like, the vintage ones. And I record with those, and I'll take them on gigs where I can drive in my car, but I don't take them on airplanes and like put them in storage lockers and shit.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I draw the line on the vintage. I mean, and they're tools, and honestly, with electric guitar and live performance and acoustic guitar with live performance, it's all about the pickups, man. All this other shit is just make sure it stays in tune. Make sure it uses good wood. You don't have to have great wood. You can have subpar swamp ash on a Telecaster, and if you have Jim Weeder's pickups in it, it's going to sound amazing.
Yeah.
Through a vintage Fender or a 2-Rock classic reverb, or like you get a really good amp that just has a nice platform. Maybe you want to use a couple pedals. Maybe you don't. You get great pickups. That's all you need. That's why the Maton. Now the Maton plays and feels like a vintage instrument. It's quite over the top how amazing it is as an acoustic. But that pickup is crazy. Like you put that in a PA and it sounds like $1 million. It sounds like you have a Neumann 67 on an acoustic guitar.
Neumann.
Every time. And I don't know how they did it, but I'm not asking questions. Same thing with Lawler pickups, man. You get those.
Oh, he makes
Lawler
great pickups. Yeah.
You get those pickups. You slap them in. Humbuckers P90s. I use all humbuckers P90s, single coils of his, and then those Jim Weeder. Man, I love Jim, and he's a friend of mine. But those Jim Weeder Telly pickups, man, especially the bridge. But that set of pickups that he made, he didn't do those with Lawler. He did them with someone else. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name. He's another amazing pickup guy. Those are absolutely insane. So, to me, guitar is all about the pickups, and then you get a good setup. I go to Paul Schwartz at Picamous Guitars. I've been going to him since I moved here. I've been going to him since like '97, and he's still doing my guitars. And he's in Rhinebeck, New York now, near my house upstate. And man, he has a Plek machine. His fretwork is flawless. I've been through so many changes with guitars with him, and he's been like a consultant to me over all these years to help me make them really playable and get the action right so I can play slide and fingerstyle. And he's been a crucial part of how I play. But really, it all comes down to that: a great setup, great frets, great pickups. Everything else doesn't matter. Everything else is like, what feels good on your body? Is it the right weight? Is it...
Especially as you get older.
Yeah, all my guitars are pretty light.
Good.
They always have been. I've always been more of an 8 to 10 pound guitar at the most.
Mm-hmm. What about string gauges?
Well, I use all string joy, and they're all different on every guitar depending on the tuning or how the bridge is or whatever. But my favorite standard tuning is their 9.5 to 46 set. So it's like kind of a hybrid. It's like 9.5, 12, 14, and then it goes up to 46. Sort of like a set of 10s, but a little bit lighter on the... Maybe it's a 9.5, 11.5, I think. Somehow I love that for standard. Open G is like, I'll go up to a 12 or 13 for that slide. And then for open A slide, I'll usually do 11 or 12 and up. And then acoustics, it's always 12s in standard tuning. And often with the acoustic lately, honestly, I've just been playing in standard no matter what I do. I mean, with slide, I play slide in standard, open G, open A, open D, open E. It doesn't matter. I play in all of them. And
You don't take that Martin on the road, do you?
I used to. I don't anymore.
Yeah.
Because I have
That
a
deserves. Yeah. The Martin deserves to stay at home.
Yeah, I record with it all the time. But this has been great, man. I actually got to run. I went a little over. I got my kids home. They canceled school today, so I got to go get them off their iPads. They've had enough of that junk.
You've been very gracious again for a second time with your time, and I look forward to our next conversation. We'll grab that Hornets Knicks game if we can coordinate it.
I
okay?
love it. No, this was a good excuse
Yeah.
to hang again. And I think this was an even better, more well-rounded conversation. But maybe edit it so that this last part is at the beginning.
I don't know if I can do that. I kind of like the way it ended.
You know what I mean? Like,
Scott?
get him with the gear at the beginning and have him
Yeah.
stick around for the politics.
Yeah. You know what? The politics are fine, brother. We are fellow. I shouldn't use this term because it connotates different things to different people, but we are fellow travelers on that point. So I really enjoyed it. You're very gracious, and you're a humble guy. I like that about you, and I look forward to seeing you in concert soon.
Well, thanks for all that, man. You've been very generous with compliments. I mean, I've tried to just let the music, be what it is, and if you take care of the music, it'll take care of you. And it led me to playing in bands with my heroes, and that's it's
How
not
great
something,
is that?
It's not something I take for granted. It's not something I take lightly. It's not, and it's also something to be honest with you, man, I wrestle with it, and I think the way I kind of justify it is to really try to know my stuff and really be humble and try to honor the music first. And if you do that, usually you can get through it without getting egg on your face. That's my main goal.
I hope you have a wonderful snow day.
Thanks, buddy. I'm going to take them sledding after lunch. So
There you go.
all right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, bro.
Thanks,
Take
Scott.
care. All
Bye-bye.
right.